Have we gotten accustomed to everything happening in the world? Is everyone just sort of like
I was just thinking
forgetting?
about this. Have we all gotten numb all of a sudden?
Yeah.
Like
It
myself
only takes
included.
3 weeks to get numb to anything, right? Good morning, Sean, and welcome to Unqualified Advice.
Good morning, Dan. It's a nice hot one here today in Houston after a nice rainy one yesterday,
Nice.
which means
Well,
it's a humid one.
We if anybody was watching hockey on Tuesday on TV, you would have seen flurries in the air on Tuesday evening and 7 inches where we live by Wednesday morning.
That's fun.
And now it's like going to be 80 tomorrow.
How long did that 7 inches stick around?
Not long at all.
Yeah.
But we needed all the moisture we could get.
Well, at least you got that. We had Houston hosted last night the Denver Summit in the National Women's Soccer League. Yes, the NWSL.
Okay.
Went to go check that out. As a family man, Dan, I would highly recommend it for a cost effective family outing. It was a great time.
Not too big of crowds. Kids stay happy. Kids
Absolutely.
this age. Yeah.
And fortunately or unfortunately, depending upon the way you want to look at it, it wasn't highly filled to capacity. So there was lots of space for kids to kind of roam about, and it was a welcome thing. Very affordable. Our tickets were like $100, and it was all you could eat and consume from the bar.
Interesting.
Included.
Okay.
Yeah. And there was like a couple other versions of that were a little lower cost, even just with not quite as good of a view. So yeah,
It's not a bad deal. I mean, considering that
not at
normally it's like,
all.
it's like, oh, well, however much for the ticket, and then it's also 20 for hot dog.
I myself had 2 hot dogs, but they did also have some more healthy options. They had like a nice grilled chicken and marsala and cauliflower steaks, and like if you wanted to be health conscious, they had that available. So
nice. Look at Houston.
Yeah.
Or were they placating to the Denver crowd there?
Oh, I don't think so. I don't think Denver brought a big traveling group with them. They did stomp Houston, but
okay, yeah, good to know.
But their fans did not seem to show up in force. I'll say that.
Have we gotten accustomed to everything happening in the world? Are we all getting a little bit other than everything getting more expensive? Is everyone just sort of like?
I was just thinking about this. Have we all gotten numb all of a sudden?
It only takes 3 weeks to get numb to anything, right?
I was really being self-reflective about it. It wasn't so much like observing it in others, but in my own head, yes, I've realized I'm starting to tune out certain things. And
what is that doing?
What is that doing? Is everybody else doing the same thing? I guess was my question. And Jan, I think you just confirmed at least a second data point.
Yeah.
So maybe that's the start of a trend. What does that mean though? If we're starting to get inured to this, what is that allowing to happen? I mean, look at what's going on in fuel prices. It doesn't seem to be impacting anybody because fuel prices as a percent of take-home pay are so much lower than they ever have been. I saw an interesting chart from Fred, the St. Louis's Federal Reserve Economic Database. I believe.
Something like that. Yeah.
Showing, which you can go in if you're an econ nerd, you can go in and find these great data sets that go back 100 years in some cases, sometimes longer than that, and look at things like fuel price, and then put another like average cost per gallon of gas in the United States at any given time, and divide it by median income, and you'll see what that is relative to the take-home pay. So while fuel is very high, and it's probably all we're thinking about it, it doesn't seem to be having maybe a big impact because it's not as big a percentage of the take-home pay.
Think about it because it's a change. You're thinking of the delta, right?
Yeah. I'm sure it's probably hurting the lower 10%, the last 10, 20% of the income bracket. They're probably feeling it real hard.
Who have made the largest economic gains over the past 4 years or something.
Well, actually, is that right? Would it be the lowest 10 to 20%, or would it be like the next step up? Because if you're in that lowest, you might feel it there, but then you're also maybe more reliant on public transport.
This is a good question. It also, depends on how tight you run too. I think there's a good swath in the middle that the tightening is, the nuts are actually turning tighter on the middle.
Yeah.
That isn't to dismiss the economic hardship of being on the lower bounds, but I think the middle is actually feeling the screws tighten harder. And this is, I don't know, I was just reading a report the other day.
Because when you're already on the bottom, the screws are as tight as it can be.
That's a good point. Your perceptions
Yeah,
or
I'm
like
thinking.
relationship with your economic. I don't know.
I'm trying to think of like something. This is bringing something up in my head from factfulness, but I can't quite get my mind to the point that was made there. But yeah, I think that when you're in that yeah, when you're already as tight as can be, this might not as be
What's 1%
noticeable.
more?
But
Yeah.
yeah, but so then, which is interesting. So where do you get to the point where it starts to get really noticeable and people start to get really noisy about it? Is it that third to fifth decile where there's a big swath of the population that's getting really squeezed that
One is
then
size.
gets
I think the other one
noisy?
is instead of them just having to figure it out, they're actually having to make choices about like turning Netflix off
Mm-hmm.
or something. Like something like they there's hardship and there's
Ooh,
also the feeling of going backwards. Those are two different things.
I like this angle of conversation. Let's talk about these metrics because
Okay.
I've been thinking about what are some things we could actually start to monitor that will say, because right now, if you ask me, I think the economy is still going pretty dang smoothly.
Yeah. Really
But at
surprising.
some
If
point,
we
at
just
some point, it feels like there's, because of another chart you found this week that I think we want to discuss in a minute, Dan. It seems like we might be reaching a shifting point where history would indicate that there might be some hiccups in that ongoing growth. And are there any things we could start looking for, like Netflix subscribers, like Amazon Prime subscriptions? I guess might be one. What are the metrics we could look at and track that say, oh, something's going on before we see it elsewhere?
what is more of a luxury though that people are, because what we're trying to do is find a bellwether at the beginning of the change,
Exactly.
right? And I'm worried that the Amazon Prime subscription is actually not, because it
Actually,
delivers
yeah,
the diapers, it delivers the laundry detergent, it it's like, I think people, that's probably the last
a
one to go.
bottoming signal.
Yeah.
That's probably a bottoming signal. Hey, that one started to, and like it's starting to recoup. Okay,
Now buy.
time to go. Yeah, now buy it. That's a good bottoming signal, maybe.
Interesting. Yeah.
Which is actually maybe the more useful signal too.
True. That's one way. That's, yeah. Well, I mean, preferably you have gates on both sides, right? Decision
Yeah.
making gates on both sides. Netflix, I'm kind of feeling like it's it's a squishy middle. Some people are gonna.
Yeah, because I think Netflix is so core and sticky enough. Like it would be like Paramount or the kind of the side ones that would maybe go like you would see. You could look at the
HBO.
basket. Yeah, you could maybe make a basket, right? An index basket overall, and monitor that, because I believe all those user numbers are typically reported. Oh, is Paramount's gonna be reported now? They're private, right?
I don't know. Yeah, I think so. I don't know.
Right? Is that how that is?
I'm
That they
not.
get they?
Well, they would
I'm
if
not.
it's private, then you're not going to know those numbers. Yeah,
Yeah,
unless they press release it, and then it's like they can say whatever they want.
yeah,
Kind of.
exactly. I don't know if, and at that point, cut it in half from what they probably report is the way I feel about it. Especially, we'll see.
Yeah.
You could create a basket of like all those service numbers, right? So yeah, so your streaming services would be one interesting basket. What are some other like service baskets that people pay for? Uber and DoorDash, Uber Eats, DoorDash.
Uber Eats, DoorDash, especially if you dice DoorDash by, instead of number of orders, number of like pickups versus deliveries, and if deliveries would be the first to go down, and if pickups maintained or gained, I think that would be a strong signal of people actually truly tightening the belt. Even though it still sounds ridiculous to use DoorDash if you're tightening the belt, I get that. However, I'm trying to look at
However,
like, where
yeah,
does
it's
that?
like no, because you're right. I think I hadn't even thought of that granularity.
I mean, you can save $25 just by going picking it up yourself.
That's a very good intuition of looking at the delta between those two. If those are reported.
If those are reported.
Well, hey, no, but now you know what? We can go plug into EDGAR and build a little tool, and I'm gonna set this up as a little project for us to maybe something we can set up and monitor on that website. I'm eventually gonna build.
Yeah. Then make some automated trading on it.
Yeah. So let's say what are some other baskets? I think food, being kind of like that pickup luxury delivery is kind of a luxury, right?
The key, yeah.
For this, I'm trying to, because it's got to be that something that everybody is going to use, not just like LVMH, right?
Right. Well, yeah,
it's luxury, but it's different.
The number of Birkin bags sold really does not tell you much about the economy.
Yeah.
It tells you about the psychology of the rich. That's
it. It tells you about the psychology of the middle.
Does it?
We already no, I said what tells you about the psychology of the middle. I guess we already talked about it. McDonald's fast food pickups, it probably is about as good as anything. Concert tickets? Are there numbers from that you could get from Live Nation?
Ticketmaster?
Or
Yeah.
about event attendance, maybe?
Maybe.
I think that's probably lumpy. It really depends upon.
I mean, I think there was a hot dog that sold for like $200 at the Miami Grand Prix.
Dang.
But again, I think that shows you the global rich, not anything about.
I was gonna say that doesn't tell me who's. I don't
Yeah.
who from Miami actually went. You know.
Well, plenty of Miami. Plenty.
Yeah. No. Maybe not local Miami's, but yes.
I will tell you, the hot dog looked worth having. No, I would not pay $200 for it, but it was like a croissant bun, and it's there's caviar on top, and seemed pretty nice.
It's all in the caviar. It's caviar. Caviar's on trend right now.
Is it really?
Very much so. Very much so. So much so that my wife and my mother-in-law made us do a caviar tasting. It was a lot of fun, actually.
Yeah.
But it was silly. But it was.
Was that a first time for you, caviar?
No, I'd had little bits here and there before, but it was fun to have several different styles side by side.
That is fun. I agree.
Little accoutrements and little garnishes to make little bites with them.
Yeah. Well, especially when you're unfamiliar, like having that variety, I think is instructive, right? When it's like, oh yeah, I've had caviar, but it was 3 years ago and it was a totally different kind. It's like, yeah, it's different, but I don't know. It's 3 years ago. Okay. Well, you're squarely in the middle. Is caviar sales going to be a bellwether? It always felt like to me it was something in the upper echelon, you know?
I don't think I'm squarely in the middle here because both my wife and I have pretty good salaries and no children. So our
your disposable is much higher than most of us.
Our disposable might be a little higher. And we're a little able to do things like that because of that situation.
I used to live like that.
Yeah.
Not anymore.
However, that being said, because it is kind of, I think it got popular on TikTok and Instagram. Like it might be a.
But that's not going to be a
good thing to watch out
it's
for.
It's going to boost
it's gonna
and then come back down.
Yeah, up and down. You're right. It'll be peak and valley.
I feel bad for companies that have to react to that. It's like all your cash disappears trying to meet demand, and then all of a sudden the demand. Anyway, it's like those waves on inventory businesses that cash has to go out the door before you can earn the cash back. Like that bankrupts you.
Yeah.
Or just consumes
what are some common, can you think of some examples of things in history, big companies in history that's happened to? Off the top of your head?
Trying to think. In my head.
Nah,
I'd have to go study it.
Yeah. No, but that is absolutely brutal because you have then all your money tied up in working capital that's just frozen and you end up liquidating at 30 cents on the dollar because you can't sell it. And so you just
on the back end. Yeah. And on the front end, it's like, oh, I've got to meet this demand. This is really exciting. Right? Like you don't know the future. You don't know that this is going to drop off on the back end. You think like all you do is look at your demand signals and go like, I've got to meet it in order to stay alive. So you might have, if you have an extra 10K lying around, all 10K of that, you stop paying yourself. All 10K of that goes into inventory. And then by the time, depending on your length of inventory cycle and that, demand surge, what happens if you order too much essentially. Right. And then there's these other companies who, 80% of their sales are done in November, December, and they have to do demand forecasting and like, just think about Liberation Day in 2025, right? Like your costs just doubled and you exactly at the time you're supposed to be putting all your POs into China for everything, right? Like when that happened, my tune was like, Christmas isn't happening.
Remember, it ended up for the most part not.
I continue to be surprised at the strength of the economy.
I know.
No, I mean, if we just got my tune's still the same. If we got out of the way, it'd be kind of crazy. I think how strong things would be for
that's. I feel like we've had enough things pulling it down that we really should be way ahead of where we are.
But at the same time, tariffs are supposed to be inflationary. But the structural problem that we had was not enough supply. We had too much demand, right? So like. The cure for high prices is high price. It's like maybe this, my whole, I had a drum beat and it was Christmas isn't happening and inflation's going to go up. And both those things kind of haven't happened. Wait for Hormuz to really play out till September. But, yeah.
What's happening in September? Why do you say September?
It feels like the length of time enough where like every single country's oil reserves outside of the United States are zero.
So...
And it starts getting cold.
And at the
same time.
this is where this is where I wonder how much of analyst number three's, revelation of how much is really getting through
Hmm.
still is a question I have floating around in my head, because I feel on certain spots, something should have happened that hasn't happened. And I'm not able to be
Something
specific.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We actually got some good news at work, because something was what we were expecting to happen isn't happening just yet. So I'm wondering where supply is coming from,
Fascinating.
and that makes me wonder is how many ships might be getting through and under the weather. Although certainly at a far limited rate versus what it was
For sure.
pre-conflict, because it's still probably only 20%.
But if you have to reprioritize what gets through, right? The highest values things are going to get through before the low value ones.
Absolutely. And there has been a significant amount of rerouting that has been able to be done through other pipelines and through some land routes for certain things. But
Well, that was one of the points in the analyst three piece, right? It was like you don't understand the psychology. He was talking to a local or whatever. He's like, you don't understand the psychology of the Middle East. We've been moving atoms through our world to service the world under conflict forever. It's the only thing that we know. Like when things get easy, it's kind of weird. And so there's, the smugglers get bored or whatever. And then all of a sudden now it's like, hey, smuggler's paradise. Everything has to go underground now. Atoms keep moving. It's like prohibition, but different.
yeah, it's more expensive, but it's
Yeah.
still moving.
Yeah. And the people who get paid most are the ones who most of us would be like,
and
I
I
wish
think
that
we're
one wasn't getting
seeing that
paid.
inflation hit, and we're seeing that inflation hit at the pump. And also there are countries where they're running low on fuel, like
Dude, the Philippines.
Pakistan. And Pakistan this week, I believe put up a big tender offer for LNG, because their supplies are running low.
Well,
They were hoping
planters in Thailand, Philippines, like they're just starting to hit a planting cycle, and it looks like farmers are not planting as much as they normally do, and reducing fertilizer. So double whammy. Total yields will go way down.
I mean, are they not planting as much because they don't have the fertilizer to support it, or because they can't afford the tractors to actually do the digging?
Probably both, but I don't know how much. I don't. Rice is.
I'm not positive.
I've walked a lot of rice paddies, and I've seen bicycles and humans.
Yeah.
In that part, in those specific countries. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm not. I would not put my answer. I wouldn't put a whole lot of weight on either. Right. Like I was in touristy areas. Maybe the rice paddies are there for more decoration than actual yield. I literally don't know. I'd have to. But I think it's you bring up an interesting angle. I just kind of thought it was just fertilizer and maybe total money spent on seed or something, right? They're just trying to protect cash.
Exactly. That's what I was curious.
I wasn't
what
thinking
was
about
the motivation?
The mechanical side of it.
I mean, also because at some point, if you have less production, there's prices will go up for them, right?
Exactly.
So there's some equilibrium in that. So you're saying September. Okay.
That's kind of what I think. Like between these harvests, these yields for these countries that are most exposed and have zero energy domestically, they have to import everything. The way the numbers look right now is storage will be at zero. Yields of the crops that should be sold then will have halved or whatever the number is.
Mm-hmm.
And so I just think like this really starts to sting. And then meanwhile, the Northern Hemisphere is like, yo, got to turn on my heat. I mean, it's like a triple, quadruple whammy. You know what I mean? Like in terms of the demand versus supply.
You bring up a good second order thought process there that I hadn't fully played out in my mind about how the crop cycle would play into the timing of that. Yeah, because that is impacting right now, which then will result in prices and shortages later in different parts of the world. Still doubt we'll see much of an impact here in the U.S. other than elevated prices.
Yeah. Which will just placate the voting populace, yeah? More? Or like, I mean, if all we have to complain about is a $1.50 increase in gas prices.
Yeah. Unless you start to see food inflation from it too. So, if there's a increase in a shortage in rice, then the global price of rice changes because rice is...
How much does that affect Americans?
Well, think about all the things that it's used in, right? So you have... Again, it's not huge. I'm just playing out the what ifs. It would be into foodstuffs that would be,
correct.
Either rice itself or
Banh mi buns.
Rice Krispies, Crunch Bars.
Frosted Flakes. Maybe that's
Yeah.
corn. I don't know.
Rice flour is pretty used in a lot of stuff.
It is, yeah.
Rice vinegar, sake. There's that there's impacts globally from these shortages that happen more locally, right? In terms of overall pricing dynamics. So then we could see some serious food inflation here. And I've been watching food prices like a hawk, and I've actually seen a few things kind of coming down a little bit. Here's an indicator. I hadn't watched food prices at the grocery for 12 years.
Yeah.
I don't know. At least. And then like the last 6 months, I've really started looking at like the unit, like, okay, what's better per unit here? Like something happened where like I'm starting to look, and I don't know if that's just because I'm interested in it or is.
I think it's more curiosity for you, but maybe,
Okay.
Yeah. It's.
I still, yeah. I've found myself picking the cheaper thing a few times now.
Us too, in the past year and a half, probably. No, another thing where like we just used to not think about it. And then suddenly, here's another idea. I doubt that this data is accessible, or maybe through a data broker it is. Coupon use. Just sheer number of scans.
Yeah, that would be hard to really get. You have to have some second order.
That's data broker
alternative
stuff.
Data.
Yeah,
right.
Data. Yeah, exactly. But I think,
Yeah.
I mean, in terms of like finding signals, I think that could be one of them, or
That's
interesting
an interesting one. Yeah, that would be an interesting one. Okay.
Because you're gonna online, there's a bunch of people that they're just tuned that way, right? They might have plenty of money, but they love couponing, and so they're gonna coupon. And then others where like they coupon out of necessity, and it's kind of a baked in part of their lifestyle and routine. And then there's the people who shift, and that's the swing voter on coupons is the one I want to know about.
Yeah, when did couponing go up by 5%?
Exactly.
What does that indicate for other? Yeah. Because that then ends up. So who's going to discount most for you couponing? What, Coca-Cola, Procter and Gamble,
all the food stamp foods,
Johnson & Johnson.
I don't know how the couponing market works, right? Like, is that a good way for getting new customers? Like if you launch from like D2C only and now you're available across all Krogers, for example, then would you want to give a 5-cent coupon or something like that? Because then it makes people take a chance, or like that in itself is an advertisement.
Yeah, if it's a new product, right? There's different, like if it's a launch of a new product, that's a very specific advertising method. Like last night at the soccer game, as we were exiting, there was somebody handing out these new chickpea puffed little snacks, and they had a little, they were kind of tasty. I'm probably going to pick up a bag, but it came with a $1 off coupon from HEB, our grocery here, or Walmart.
Nice.
So it's like, here's a snack and a coupon if you want to go buy more. But I think also in the supermarket, they put up displays of, frequently the coupons will be associated with a newer product. Sometimes newer products that don't move as well. I tend to notice that a lot. I'll see a brand around for a while. I'm like, oh, that's kind of a new brand. I don't really want any. And then a month later, that new brand's then got a coupon on it, for 20% off. And then a month later, it's gone from the store and never back again. So there's different modes, right?
Yeah.
So I would want to know the coupons on Coca-Cola, on
Staples,
Tide,
or like long term.
The heavy hitters. I want to know the behavior on those.
That's a good point.
Specifically. I don't know how we get that data, Dan, but that would be interesting.
No, that's a really good question. Also, it's like, if someone was ambitious and wanted to build, here's a place to maybe build,
Yeah.
Two-sided marketplace. You got to go get the people who don't want to give you the data, and then you got to go charge an arm and a leg to specific high willingness to pay for good signal firms. And there you go.
Easy. Why hasn't somebody thought of this?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's plenty of business.
I'm sure
they get good.
I'm sure this probably exists somewhere. Somebody will sell this service to us for
a
$1,000
couple
a
summer
month.
homes if you are successful.
Okay. Well, I'm trying to think. Those. I think. I mean, as far as the important metrics like food, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, food, housing. Okay, in housing, any metrics around housing that we haven't talked about that would be worth watching.
I think it's hard to disentangle the local market, right? Because you look at Austin and you're like, well, housing prices are going down. It's like, no, they actually did really great housing policy and built, versus the San Jose, or I don't know, pick your Seattle.
What about something like a national tally of new build permits? I mean, that would probably be lagging. Like if that starts to crash, then it's definitely not good, and things have
Yeah, but
already turned. But what's the leading
is it
indicator?
applications for permits or actual permits?
That's a good question.
Because some permits take 3 years. You know what I mean? Like if you get permit initiation data, it's like, what's the lag on that?
Yeah,
Or like
that's
it's
a
disconnection with the very signal that you're trying to find. I don't know. No, I
yeah.
don't know enough there.
Okay, what food, housing? What else is on Maslow's hierarchy?
National rents?
Like median levels?
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea. Although, I mean, that's really more. That's what's that going to tell you? That's just tell you the price is rising. Or I guess if it starts to decline, structurally decline, you have a problem, right?
I think so. I mean, I just kind of think about rents as like they're either going to be stable or go up.
Yeah.
Because again, Maslow's hierarchy, right? Like where.
Okay. So yeah, bottom physiological, food, shelter. Next, safety. What about subscription services to like ADT
Simply
or
Safe?
Simply Safe? That's not bad. Gym memberships maybe would be somewhere in mixed in here.
Yep.
Love and belonging. So that would be what, subscriptions to the various dating apps, maybe.
Yeah, it must be. I mean, I think I just saw a quote from, I don't know her name, the founder of, I'm going to guess Bumble, maybe. And she was like, I don't know, my stock goes up 40%, my stock goes down 40%. I don't care. She's like, I just keep killing it. That's all I do. Something like that.
Good for her.
Yeah.
Good
No,
for
totally.
her.
But also, like, to your point, I mean, probably a more volatile market than I think at the beginning people just thought like, well, there's always young people and they always have to date, so here we go. And maybe we see here, not only is the toxicity of that system starting to shine within the cohort who is supposed to be buying into it, and they are on some small degree, so some of them are rejecting it. And
I mean, you think about this. There's a generation of people now talking about the pros and cons of dating apps. Eventually, there's going to be a generation of people who are like, "Ooh, that sounds terrible. I'm not going to do it," and they're going to
Yeah.
like be thrashed. I feel like it's gonna be like at
Thrashed?
least their popularity will be like just absolutely
apps.
Yeah, will
Yeah.
be like I don't know. It seems like that could be ultimately a cultural trend where people become
I think we could puke them up.
Yeah,
So
those
like
those
the
could
body
ultimately have
rejects it.
some. Yeah, some those ultimately could have some major fragility where all of a sudden the usage goes to 30% of what it currently is.
I think it was interesting. Like there was such taboo around it, like at the beginning, and then like OkCupid did it well. Like they did it. They were actually data driven, and it seemed like I know quite a few couples who like say they met on OkCupid, and I'm like, oh, that's awesome. And now the data, it's a gamification. Like it's not data driven. It's not an interesting like bringing two different people together. It's literally democratizing the choice because you put it in the hands of the people who are making the choice, rather than like, I don't know what I'm trying to say there. I think OkCupid had a really, really interesting angle on all of it, but it isn't. It isn't the dopamine virality cheap way. And so and since this is a two-sided market, the bigger the market is, the more people you get to participate in it, right? Like Google is big for a reason. And if OkCupid eventually couldn't, ride the gamification waves, and everybody went to the more popular whatever app, then it dies. And now we're stuck with this gamification. Anyway, I think the body's going to reject this gamification stuff. I think the beginning phases is already in. I just don't know how far it'll go.
Yeah, right. 'Cause it's out there. It'll stick around as somebody using it as a business model for.
Yeah, but I put like Instagram Reels on this as well. Like this stylistic, this way of living is what I'm implicating, I guess, or wanting to. I want to implicate it. I think that's my desire is to implicate.
This is what you're rooting for.
Yeah.
So what we're getting here is a little bit of personal bias off of Dan on this one.
Yeah, I'll stand by that. I want people to live well.
I'm with you. I think it would be a good trend to see take a swing the other way momentum. Just if nothing else, just to see what it. I want to see the momentum swing the other way just to see what happens as the repercussions. Like it seems like it would be, for me, there'd be some net positives to well-being for people, but maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's something else, and this is just.
Well, I think all things. Well, I mean, yeah, I would 100% agree with you that good things have come of it. I think about the internet and think like, wow, you can be interested in some super niche thing and like find your person or find your tribe. Like this scattered mess of people who are interested in this thing. And that is a beautiful thing of the internet. That cuts exactly two ways, though. If you're really interested in creating the newest, most deadly bioweapon, you can probably also find your people.
Mm-hmm.
So
Some
yin
one
and
of those
yang everywhere,
chans.
right? Like there is no like, oh, I only want the good side. It's like, well, nothing in the world has ever worked that way.
It can always be used for a way you didn't think it could be used, and
Yeah, never doubt human ingenuity, right? Like we've said that's been a running theme of ours, is of just never bet against the human.
If it can be used for sex or drugs, it will be used for sex or drugs. Is effectively all you need to know about humanity.
Yeah. You want to see some like how I do want to go behind the scenes at one of the big AI labs and understand exactly how some of the safety works. Intellectually, I'm just really interested in how that works, because like that line between like speech and expression and creativity and exploration, all that also is deeply implicated with the whole like, we're going to keep you safe and not let these machines do this, and this idea can't be explored, and you can't make bioweapons.
Yeah, you're right. Well, let's say you were enterprising enough to be like, I'm not going to ask directly about the thing, the topic at hand, but I'm going to know enough and be like, okay, I need to know more about. Tell me more about how to make chlorine gas.
Yeah.
Like,
does it travel through shower heads?
Like, yeah, at what point is it going to be like, or you know what they could do for safety is set it up when it gets a certain pattern, like we're going to give back bad info and like set an alert. You know,
well, I mean, that's already happening in the UK, right? Like you make a bad tweet, the police seem to be showing up at your door, but
that's just if you're
but like, you can create deadly protests in the streets and not go to jail. So there's
if you're just rude on the internet, the police can come harass you. But yeah, if you can.
There's something a little broken over in the UK. Did you turn notifications off for David Deutsch? Because you would definitely be like you get a stream of what's bad about the UK right now. Not just his great ideas, but he's very connected to like the.
No, but you're right. I thought I started to follow him. I have to go to check.
Well, I think there's a bunch of stuff that doesn't get pushed by the algorithm.
No, but
for better, for worse.
He'd be I chronological. I'm chronological.
Nice, good for you. Okay.
Only do for you. I do not do anything else. Or wait, no, not for you. My timeline. Because following, yes.
Yeah.
I like it. I'll pick my algorithm. Thank you very much.
I understand.
It makes discovery sometimes slow. Like I've sometimes late to some stuff, but like at the same time, it's curated.
Okay, interesting. I think I follow too many people now. My Twitter, the people I follow has grown up like this, like the streets of London. I'm going to invoke that phrase again. And it's like, I think I looked at the numbers recently. I was like, I bet half of them are 100% dark and silent. The number doesn't really matter, but because like I followed them 16 years ago and
yeah, they stopped posting. Yeah, there's a lot of those. Well, any other indicators that we could watch? Otherwise, what are we going to talk about next, Dan? No, I wanted to talk about this. I mentioned this chart that you shared.
Yeah.
Because
U.S. debt now exceeds the size of the economy, a once unthinkable threshold.
Indicator. Yeah, this is definitely an indicator of something. I don't know what.
Of something, exactly. Yeah, a new way that this country will be run.
Yep. So there's a chart that Dan shared from the Wall Street Journal this week. They source it as the White House Office of Management and Budget, the Treasury Department and Commerce, Department Bureau of Economic Analysis. So take that for what it's worth. But showing, we have just a simple line chart from 1942 to today. In 1942, it shows that the U.S. debt as a percent of the size of the economy was about 40%. Then for some reason, by 1950, it climbed to about 105%.
Gee, I wonder why. What happened?
What happened? But then it precipitously falls right back off. And from 1950 to 1970, gets down to about 20%. The United
States got to absorb the world's dollars, as we also gave dollars to the world, right? It was a huge, big exchange and blossoming of cooperation. Economic cooperation. No,
really, if you think about it, it's almost the way you would think about building a factory for producing fixed goods with fixed cost, right? You're going to have this huge outlay up front, And then,
Well, it was our industrial
right?
might that
That's
won that
exactly what
war,
it was.
right?
Yeah.
And then we were the only ones left that weren't bombed out. So everyone else needed to rebuild. And instead, United States,
So we got to pay off the debt on all the
well, antithetical to like every single other war in human history, instead of punishing the people that lost the war, we helped the vast majority of them rebuild, which was economically a very good decision. Leaving all of the morality and everything aside, it was just good practice for human flourishing.
It was.
Which is, you just study World War I for the antithetical answer, or the opposite answer. Antithetical? I'm not using, anyway, yeah, the opposite.
I think you're right.
The opposite practice, World War I.
Yes. So then after bottoming around 23%, around like about 74, it looks like GDP kind of hovers around low 20s, climbs back up into the 90s around 40-50%, which I remember being on the news, people talking about being a huge thing. But then late 90s comes back down as that was probably
booming
the Clinton
economy
years.
after
The
92,
booming,
yeah.
The booming years of Clinton, bottoms, really local bottom there, 2001. And then starts to climb up
interest
slowly.
rates, or was actual issuance the issue for the climb from 75 to 90? I mean, probably the answer's both, but
90. Yeah, from 75 to 80 at least. 85. Interest rates started to come down in the late 80s. So up to 90
to come down, probably mid 80s, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of that
Very
growth
high
is
level.
Yeah. Yeah, from a very high level. Actually, that's a good note, Dan, because a lot of that debt is going to be really tied to the rate increase that we saw.
Yeah.
We had to, because of the inflation problem hitting in the 70s, having to crank up rates,
which was another supply side crisis.
Mm-hmm. Yes, correct. But then in 2010, we had a decade of low interest rates, but our debt just started going up at a pretty precipitous pace, and we are now sitting currently at about 100.2%. So our debt is larger than our gross domestic product. This is not entirely unheard of territory. Dan, you mentioned at least one country that has seen this happen before.
And has sustained it for a very long time. Japan.
Yeah.
They got to the point where total gross debt was estimated around 236 to 260% of GDP as of 2024 to 2025. Then that number is now coming down.
It's been coming down since when? Since 2023?
This high of 24, 25.
Oh, wow. Okay. So okay, they have a short term. They have a short trend going.
Yeah, but I think let's see here. Let's see. It's estimated at 232 now for as of 2025. It was as high as 258 in 2020. So it's declining since 2020.
Okay.
But,
okay.
I mean, these numbers are still astronomical, right? 236, 258. 2025 is the first time they've reduced it to a level below since 2019. Anyway, they've been running huge for a long time. And this is from Trading Economics.
And they've had their interest rates effectively pegged at zero for a long time too, right?
Which is also changing.
Yes, which is also changing. They're starting to encourage more private investment, and so they've been
an international money flow, right?
So
they've been to essentially open up the economy, like the financialized economy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly, which I think is going to be some interesting dynamics for them coming here in the future. But in terms of what we see here in the U.S., it's so you might
already have an internationalized, financialized economy.
Yeah. Yes.
What strings are we going to pull?
What strings are we going to pull? That's a good question. Well, you mean to try to drive this down?
That's the question. Do you drive it down, or do you expand
do you
out
need
of it?
That's what.
I think
that's
you
where
expand out of it. That's what happened in World War II.
Is what happened in World War II. You have to expand out of it. So how do we expand out of it?
If you approach this with shrinking pie, zero sum, I have to coupon my way out of this, good fucking luck.
Well, the problem with the expand your way out of it is you have to have a baby boom. You have to
you in the age of AI?
Well,
all these things are being rewritten. I would totally agree with you, and that would have been my answer, but I think there's a question mark on that answer now. If the rare unicorn engineer in Silicon Valley was the 10x engineer, what if everyone worth 50% IQ and up is now a 10x person, because one, they can exercise their own ideas and their own.
So your productivity, you're
just general productivity.
You're saying your productivity is going to go through the roof in terms of
a financialized service-based economy. Yeah, which we are.
Which we are.
And if we want to do the hard tech thing and bring back American manufacturing, it's not going to be with widgets and little stamped pieces of metal. It's going to be Anduril. It's going to be like innovative. It's going to be pushing the edge and leading. And I'm extremely bullish on America's ability to do that, so long as we can get the mind viruses out of our heads.
Okay. I could see how we have conditions that could allow for that, and that being a definite possible path from here. I lost my train of thought.
I was going to say, what are you thinking about right now? There's got something
I just
going
lost
on.
it. I had it and I lost it. No, you're right on in terms of one could grow their way out of this, or economy could grow its way out of this. We have some headwinds to that in terms of overall declining birth rate, where we aren't
worldwide
going to.
Though, so it's not like we're different. Like we have immigration as a pathway, and most countries don't. Like economic, like we don't just do immigration. We do immigration and assimilation. That's a difference.
Immigration is a pathway that is slower right now, but is also something that can possibly.
We could be making choices that unleash this economy.
Yes. This is
so many ideas.
How do you? My worry is to grow to the level you need to is how do you do it with just that? We're saying it's just automation, artificial intelligence that's going to be bringing this around, right? And bringing this extra productivity growth. It's a
tool. So I think the Financial Times had this graph of it was just like I don't remember what the line was representing, human progress or whatever, and it was just like this straight up and to the right, up and to the right graph, and then it was this like AI inflection upward, and it was just like straight line up, and then this like we're all gonna die and get eaten by the AI is like straight line down, and then this dotted line kind of continuing human progress, and it was like great. I'm glad we really defined like all the possible outcomes. It's the stupidest graph I've ever seen. But anyway, that center line, that through line, I mean, I think there's going to be a nice tick up, but it's going to travel along the same trajectory. I think my point is like the mind virus right now seems to be a whole bunch of people being down on America, down on the world, down on human progress, and down on our ability to thrive. And instead, this is going to be like all pieces of technology, disruptive, hard for some, great for some. And then we will equalize on the back end, and we will all, again, get used to it, right? We've all gotten used to Hormuz being closed until bigger ramifications ahead. Here, we will get used to this tool existing in our world, and more of us will become more and more proficient at producing tangible, yieldable results in ways that we have not yet conceived of, because God help anyone 25 years ago say, oh, you can start a podcast and like create economic value through it or whatever.
See,
we have so many things that we do not yet know.
Yeah, and where I'm thinking about this is there's something that has tension in my mind around this. Mm-hmm. So in one way, we're saying things are going to improve for, like, let's look at it from the corporate level. A corporation would expect to benefit because their workers will be more productive. They can get more done with the same amount of people, or if they're doing more demand, they can get the same amount done with fewer people, right? So you're going to have at some point, I think there's going to be more companies that can get more done with the same amount of people, hopefully in the long term, but you are going to have a big shift of we can do what we do with half as many people as well.
Yeah.
You're going to need more companies. What we haven't been seeing, and what's one thing that is maybe frustrating to me is that you look at the total number of publicly traded companies today in the United States versus
that's going to be the wrong metric though.
No, I know, but the number is shrunk. Like
totally,
because and for reasons.
Yeah.
We need a lot more. We need a lot more people to be starting new businesses, to be employing these things and putting people.
And the vast majority of those businesses are not going to have any chance of being publicly traded ever. The guy won't be big enough. I'm talking about like the person who, works a corporate gig but also has two side hustles, two separate LLCs that were started, and has real. Like people, all of a sudden, like, you and I, when we graduate in college, like if you could hit 100K salary, you're like, baller.
Yeah.
Not very far in the future, people are just going to be like expecting 300K. I think. Not from a job, from the things that they do. I think it's just this reorientation around how, I mean, again, I'll pick on the mind virus, but this feeling that people have an expectation of what should be given to them, or an expectation of what should be provided to them. Like, that's going to go absolutely going to have to go out the window. And I think the only way for it to go out the window is for people to start seeing not the 750 millionaire go to billionaire, but from seeing the neighbor down the street also not go billionaire, but go like from a little on the edge to really wonderfully comfortable, and it only takes an extra 4 hours a week, something like that. And I think that's going to rain down upon people in the not so distant future, if you're willing to do some things, right? Like, I think it's a re-architecting of how we live, which again is going to be super uncomfortable for some people, but I think this is going to provide so much opportunity for so many people as well. I'm super amped because I think there's so much possibility here.
There is. And I can see why people are scared too, because it sounds like a lot of change.
Yes, 100%. Good change ahead is also scary. Yeah, 100%. I agree. Yeah. And that's what I think, just like, I want messaging to change. I want messaging from the very top to change, right? Like, I've worked in organizations I've only worked in small organizations, but like the actual person at the top, even if like they're totally checked out and not part of things, like their messaging matters. And I want a lot better messaging. And I'm seeing zero from both sides on that. Personally, I mean, maybe I actually saw Marco Rubio say something that I really liked, and I haven't listened to a lot of Rubio. I really love the memes that have been coming out about him for the past 6 months or something. Really, it's sad Marco and all of it. But
I love the sad Marco meme. It is my favorite.
but he was anyway, he was just he had a quick little line from the microphone the other day, and it was I wish I could just bottle it up and give it to everyone and make it said by all kinds of people, so that the person that whoever you need to receive that exact message from, it came from them. That's what I would, if I could panopticon or incept people, or, you know what I mean? Like the message would be provided by the person you're going to be receptive to, but the message is the same, which is, we are exceptional. We are going to go places. The color of your skin doesn't matter. Your education doesn't matter. All you have to do is get after it. Like, that was, if you really break it down, that's basically what his message was.
Mm-hmm.
You can come here and be different and achieve, and it's up to you.
Dan, that's a beautiful sentiment.
I know, it's
beautiful sentiment.
Yeah.
And I think maybe a perfect place for us to wrap it for the week, because I don't think we're going to be able to top it. Okay. No, I think that's a perfect spot.
Yeah, I agree. That's it's right on top of your go build. It's be agentic. It's do things, like try, and over a long enough time horizon, you will be rewarded. If nothing else, your soul will be fuller.
It will. The act of creation, I think, is fulfilling in a way that nothing else is.
Consuming on your screen is not.
Yes. Creation versus consumption, right? Creation fills, consumption drains. So,
all right, let's leave it there.
Go build something, everybody.